Yeah, I didn't have the Wi-Fi on.
So we've been working on a EDA
Oh, I didn't even know that.
planning grant for the last couple of years,
See if
and
this works, hopefully we'll figure.
many of you have been involved in that, and
Thanks,
we're
Jasmine.
going to show you kind of what our results have been. We're going to be meeting with each of the city councils of the 5 communities between River Rouge and Trenton, and kind of showing what our results are. We're getting ready to wrap up our reports, and so we wanted to get more engagement with each community by going in front of the city councils. Perfect.
I don't know if we need to duplicate it or extend it.
Should be.
What is that? Like a screensaver?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a piano? Yeah? Took me like 30 tries in my head to
HDMI 1. It's usually a good sign.
8 years
Yep,
of
then
piano.
the background would, yeah.
Very familiar with that.
Let's just see if it flips.
You can play piano.
Can't now.
Why not? 8 years you should be able to.
4 years at German, I can't remember that either.
Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
That was set at 80.
Are you serious?
I turned it down to 70.
I'm gonna make a motion that the heat cannot be turned up past 67.
Yeah, the motion is going to be Dave prays now Dan and the AC.
Put one of those little clear lock
I
boxes over
promise you I
it.
will.
I have the Nest
I think we
control,
gotta
so
get his
Tish thinks
laptop.
that he sets it to what he wants.
Yeah.
And then I knock it down a few on my phone, because he doesn't have access to
Is
the
that-
ins and
yeah, I don't
outs.
Is it a PowerPoint presentation?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a regular PowerPoint.
All right.
Cody, you want to get your machine? We know your machine talks to it.
And you thought it was gonna be an easy night.
Your number every time.
What'd you have in Lansing today?
We did the update on the brownfield program that they've been giving around the state,
Mm-hmm.
and I missed the one that was in
My
here
fishing
because I
is
was at
going
another
up to the
meeting.
bar.
Uh-huh.
So I went up
It's
here
a big
to
file, so.
catch up on what they were doing.
Physically, you got a little lunch, right? There's no water.
If that's what you want to
I
do.
asked a few questions, so it's good.
You fish right off your dock, though, didn't you? Water boats.
Go to a grandson.
Beside, got the big hook in his finger, you know?
Yeah.
I could have taken that.
Oh, no, there was a
Yeah.
bunch of
We had
women.
another
I guess so.
presentation last
There
week.
was, there was
Mine?
a bunch of women.
Yeah, if it's not,
You just back off and get out of the way. Mama was going out of her
Now to
mouth.
give me an email and a
Come on.
account number to.
She was, I just sat back.
That's your daughter-in-law?
I mean, I'm
I
okay
gave
with
it to
the
you.
organization.
Oh.
Instead of making
It was
it
to shred.
Oh,
We're
just
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
to surgery.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
I've had it
Everything you get shot, don't
Get account numbers.
prepared and everything, and the
Uh-huh.
slides won't work.
Yeah,
and
for the
it's-
golf.
That was much for your look.
You want to have a puppet show or
Yeah.
something at that point.
That tetanus is terrible.
Well, no, but the golfers need it. No, we're gonna make the checks out to you.
you collected centrally.
Out goes.
No, no,
I
I'm not
called
doing
Jimmy
that.
on the phone. Jimmy sent me a thing. on how
Just
to
wrap it
do
around.
Yeah.
I'm
It comes
not,
right out.
I'm not having anybody make a check out to me.
Oh, no, I guess I go, okay, I'll stay up back.
History
I'm fine with it, I'm not going to the hospital.
Get
You
there.
rode up
Back
to
and
West
forth.
Branch, up to the hospital.
How far is that from?
and
35
our
minutes.
city.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then he come back,
hey, that's a character.
So you're
for you.
east of Westford.
I'm sure.
I'm east to West.
Yeah,
You
so
could
you're
write
about
a book
45
that
minutes
way.
from
Just
Sugar
make sure we can
Springs,
see your password.
Gladwin area.
Type it in.
Yeah, I'm going to do a triangle, I am
Woman that-
Get your cameras ready.
Yeah.
30 minutes from
Kind of, I
South,
think, it's about a bit.
30
Oh, I'm
minutes
sure.
from Mile.
Because otherwise,
30
he would have
minutes.
moved.
Yeah.
He's trying to make the best of his
30.
situation.
Yeah, so Gladwin's
He makes it better.
40.
And I'm 45
And
minutes
then,
from
Yeah.
so, you know, that narrows it down.
And
Maybe the one blind guy did this
Police
summer.
officer.
I know.
It's a good
I'm
location.
not that.
I actually typed my password in, but it keeps coming out dots.
Here we go.
I am, but when you're rude over and over, it gets frustrating.
All right.
And I'll eventually
I
fix
said,
it, but
Rick, I said,
it
you
takes
wanna
a
go?
while. For those police
Lots
officers,
of
I
in-laws
swear,
always have Easter.
they earn every dollar of that shift when he's coming in and out.
To be with Rob.
Yep.
She's going to the lake. I thought, that's what I
There you
do.
go, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So that's where you're going.
That's where I'm going.
You only have one child.
Mm-hmm. Two grandkids.
How old were you when you got Rob?
25.
How old are your grandkids?
Natalie is 17 and Nate, it will be 16. They're both driving.
Oh,
Isn't
boy.
that horrifying?
Oh, boy. Well, you gotta take big guy in the van or not.
You should have saw her drive the van the first time. We were all blocked in up north. Had to run to the store. She says, I said, run to the store. I'm like, take the van. So she looks and there's no seat alongside her. So she looks at Nate. Says, get Grandma's wheelchair. She made her
Ride in the wheelchair.
And ride in the wheelchair alongside her.
Awesome.
I laughed.
You're the best, Cody.
Thank you, Cody.
Yay!
So, Mayor, do you want us to speak here at the mic or up there?
Yeah,
Because I'll have to advance the slides here anyway.
Yeah.
yeah,
so-
that would be better with the mic, because that way the people can see it, or hear them on television.
Okay.
So tonight we have Mr. John Diodana and Jasmine Dancy from the DCC going to give us a presentation on the Arkema property and where we stand today and what the status is, that type of stuff. So
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. And hello to everybody at home as well. So I don't know. Well, can they see me as well, or they'll see the back of me? Or
they'll see the back of you, but
Okay.
as long as they can see the.
all right. Yes. Okay, so these fonts look a little different than they did on our on our system. So thank you. At least you're able to see them. So just a little bit of overview for those that aren't aware. We're with the Downriver Community Conference. Again, my name is Jasmine Dancy. I'm the Economic Development Administrator. The DCC has been supporting, Riverview and all of these communities here for nearly 50 years. The organization has been around. We offer a multitude of different departments and services. Workforce development is our primary one, but John's focus is brownfield redevelopment. That started in the late 1990s. But I'll give a little bit of a background on how the Economic Development Department actually came to be. So along with, many of the residents in this area, we were notified of the DTE power plant closures that were going to be impending both in River Rouge and in Trenton back in around 2018. So at that point, the Downriver Community Conference started really looking at that issue and what the implications were going to be for our riverfront area. So because we have those two DTE plants, one in River Rouge, one in Trenton, it really creates a corridor along Jefferson Ave, along the Detroit riverfront for the 5 cities there, River Rouge, Ecorse, Wyandotte, Riverview, and Trenton. And so it's really a corridor that is all interconnected from, not just the power plants, but, history of industrial uses, the waterfront, and all of that. So again, once we heard about the plant closures, the DCC started doing some economic development planning work. We did one round of strategic planning with a consultant based out of Toronto. And shortly after that, we hit the pandemic and the world changed as we all know it. And we also, in the process, were receiving feedback that initial planning process was not as community informed or invested in the community as what the public wanted to see and what our stakeholders wanted to see. So we had the opportunity then to really take another look at things, especially after the pandemic and how everything was different. So at that point, we were able to convene the Downriver Riverfront Strategy Team and the planning process, and that was in partnership with the University of Michigan Economic Growth Institute. That was in 2021. And again, we convened probably more than 30 partners on our strategy team at that time. It included representatives from all 5 of those riverfront cities, as well as other local grassroots neighborhood organizations, other government levels and stakeholders at the county, the state level, the federal level as well. And we came up with a full plan for economic revitalization, shared priorities across all 5 riverfront communities. Through that process, we had 5 priorities, several objectives, and additional projects that were proposed by our Riverfront Strategy Team members. And so what we did was we were able to align those projects and the priorities with some upcoming funding opportunities at the time. Like I said, this completed in 21-22 timeframe. And one of the opportunities that came up was with the Economic Development Administration and their coal communities initiative. So, like again, because of the coal plants were being closed, it opened us up for opportunity for this funding source that we haven't been able to access before. So with that, we made an application and were awarded the Coal Communities Grant in 2022 is $1.6 million. And we were able to get matching funds for that initiative from the Michigan State Treasury, Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and also MEDC. So those were our 3 matching components. So that grant started in 2022. That's how I was able to be brought on with the Downriver Community Conference. That grant had 3 main goals, or has 3 main goals. The first is to create a regional economic development office. So that's where I stand. I still oversee the longevity of that original strategy plan and all the efforts and the priorities and all the projects, advancing those, as well as assisting our communities with economic development that many of our communities don't have the capacity for or budget for a full-time economic development director. So that's where my job is to help support and provide that capacity as well. So that was the first goal of that EDA grant, Economic Development Administration. The second goal was to create a small business technical assistance office. And through that, we did $150,000 worth of grants. I think 3 at least were awarded in the city of Riverview and spread across others in the riverfront corridor. That was specific for technical assistance for some selected small businesses. Ongoing, we have another colleague, Daryl Folks. He's our small business coordinator, and he continues to provide services to any small businesses that are in need, not just in the riverfront, but now open to all downriver communities, connecting them with services and resources, funding with new opportunities that small businesses in this area haven't had access to previously. So he's continuing to work on that second goal of the grant. And then finally, the third goal, which is why we're here tonight, it was the brownfield strategy plan for the riverfront area. So I'll turn it over to John here shortly, but those 3 main goals is how is what we are responsible to the Economic Development Administration. The grant goes through the end of this year. If we go over a little bit into next year, that's okay. But we are heading into completion for this third goal of the grant, and part of that is coming to all the elected bodies and getting feedback for the final round of recommendations. So with that, I will turn that over to John.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you. So you can just press this right button.
Okay, thanks, Jasmine. Okay, thanks again for having us. My name is John Diodana. I'm the Brownfield Program Manager for DCC. I'm a Brownfield practitioner, not a planner. So one of the things that we did is emanating from the strategy session with the 5 communities, we came up with these, what we call Downriver Forward, which is kind of the brand that we're using for these projects. The Downriver Forward's objectives: promote regional economic growth and diversification, foster new job creation and economic resilience, address ecological health and environmental justice, and improve the quality of life for residents. And that was not just the project that we were doing, but that as a group from the strategy team came up with for our objectives, and there'll be other projects that will be coming later that will fit into these same objectives. So the objective of the brownfield strategy was to establish sustainable and integrated reuse strategies for the 5 riverfront communities, the Jefferson Ave corridor and the Detroit River corridor, and the 2 power plant properties. That was what our objective was, to get started in looking at these different large brownfield sites. We hired a team named Stromberg Garrigan, and they had HR&A Advisors as their demographic and marketing analysis group. Subcontractor, we had Fishbeck, who's an environmental contractor, E. Austell Inc., which is a community outreach subcontractor, and a Sustainable Strategies DC, which are specialize in funding strategies for these types of projects. And our project had 4 main parts to it: public engagement, project drivers, demographics, and market analysis findings, which entailed looking at all of the existing information for these 5 communities and looking at different sites, things like population, figuring out what would work and what wouldn't work for redevelopment on these particular sites that we're going to show you. Then we went to reuse strategies, which you're going to see tonight, specifically for Arkema. And then we have fiscal impact considerations, which is looking at what would be the impact of redeveloping these brownfield sites, and also looking at funding sources and implementation strategies for these sites. So public engagement was very important that we started with that. As Jasmine said, we were lacking in that a little bit on the first go-around. So we formed work groups for each of the 5 communities that is ongoing. So we have a small group from each community that we've been interacting with on a regular basis. We've also been working with the general public in terms of, we had 4 major public open houses that were held in 2 rounds in 2024 across the entire area, so that we were looking at all 5 communities as a whole at that point, where we were just getting information out, gathering information, trying to understand what's been done in the past. One of the charges we told our consultant team was we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Every one of the communities has been doing master plans. We weren't here to redevelop their master plans and start over again. We were focusing on gathering the information, building on what's already there, and then figuring out how we could implement changes on these particular sites. So we looked at these different aspects of public engagement. We looked at, we identified what the community assets were for each of the 5 communities, what each community felt was the most needed in each community, and what the priorities were. And again, building on each individual community, gathering information, getting the word out. And we had 4 very successful open houses where we had people come in first at the beginning to identify, what these priorities were, and then later, as we've shown some of the reuse plans, getting more information and making sure we've got things correct. So this just shows you an overview of our study area. The yellow are the key sites that we developed as priorities from each of the communities. I think takeaway from this slide and the next slide is that you can see where we focused in on the yellow properties, but also the amount of shoreline for each of the communities. The purple shows that we have no access, the public has no access to those, to the shore of the river. The green lines show what is accessible, and the dotted lines are what we hope would be that we would be able to get to the river and access in the future as part of perhaps redeveloping some of these properties.
John, can I just jump
Yeah,
in?
sure.
If
Yeah.
you go back to the
Yeah.
public. Just wanted to reiterate,
This one?
specifically
Okay.
for Riverview, we definitely heard, not just here, but especially here, but really across the whole corridor, was that your priority was 100% needing more public access to the riverfront. So just please know, I want to echo that. It's captured. We heard that loud and clear. And it was especially in your city, but across all 5 as well.
Yeah.
So, and also to keep in mind, we're going to have a lot of data on these slides. Please know that you will receive a final copy, a formalized report, once we get through with all of our public meetings or presentations in the next couple of months here. So that's all of this is going to be formulated into publicly available reports, and much more than just what you see in this presentation as well. There's we could get into a ton of different points of data, but just know that all of that will be captured and will be accessible to you guys here in the future.
Thank you.
And I'm going to try to boil down some of that data so you don't have to look at 50 slides, which I have. So now here's your region here. You'll see on the left-hand side the Arkema area, which was the priority area that was selected for both Wyandotte and Riverview. Again, based on your input, not our selection, but we looked at all of the data, presented a bunch of ideas, and then the community selected what they felt were their high priority sites. And then in Trenton, you can see down by the power plant and the International Wildlife Refuge, we've got the DTE property and also the former Solutia chemical property in yellow there. And you can see there's a big difference from the standpoint that, your community has very little, waterfront access. Trenton has about 30%, which is the most of the 5 communities, but not, there's still opportunities for more riverfront access even in Trenton. So these are the slides. We're not going to show you the detailed data. They looked at our marketing analysis people looked at the population, the working age population, how that's changed the last 10 years, jobs and industry, what's working, what isn't working, where the locations are for building inventory, what's being used for residential use, whether there's going to be opportunities for more residential, recreational use, where the industrial space is in the 5 communities, what types of uses, what types of industrial activity, and also the talent and attraction and retention, knowing that the state is making a big push on that area. So all of this is background that sets up what our team thinks would work and wouldn't work on these key properties.
Conversations with Luke Bonner from the Bonner Group?
Yes, we have, yep.
Okay.
Yep, we have discussed things with him. So the upshot of all of that data is the feasibility of industrial opportunities on these key properties. And the key properties that we're looking at in your region is Arkema, but I mentioned Trenton, the Solutia DTE site. In River Rouge, it's the DTE site in the downtown. In Ecorse, it's the Mill Street former steel mill, and that whole area where Southfield tees into the riverfront. And we found that recreation was another need for the area. Downriver is lagging behind in terms of recreational opportunities, both public opportunities and public-private partnership opportunities. And our market analysis also showed, and I'm talking specifically about these large sites, low residential, office, and retail opportunities. That doesn't mean it wouldn't work in specific sites throughout the corridor, but for the ones we really analyzed, they didn't look like they were very good opportunities. So now I'm going to really focus in on your area, which you'll be more interested in. So now we're kind of zooming in over Riverview here, and we looked at, we had a number of key findings, and this is really land uses and transportation corridors and also trails, kind of just at 10,000 feet showing what's there now, and kind of taking this look as well as a look with all the data to figure out what would work in the Arkema area. We've got 3 parcels of Arkema. We've got the east plant on the river, which is where we're talked about. There's going to be dredge spoils placed on that property to just put it in perspective. And then Arkema West plant and the Arkema West Brownfield. Now, one of the key things that our team has been working on is that EPA has kind of been looking at these 3 parcels as one, and it's really, I think, forced a delay in a lot of opportunities on this particular property. So we're looking at these as 3 really succinct and separate sites in terms of opportunities here. The West plant in the middle, well, let's start with the Brownfield. The Brownfield is perceived right now as being probably the cleanliest of the 3 properties, okay? We don't have a lot of data, but all historical information looks like that will be the best opportunity to start with The west plant actually is the most contaminated of the three, and the east plant site has got some opportunities with the uncertainty of the sediment staging area. And then we also put on 4200 8th Street just so that from Wyandotte, because it's in proximity to the study area as well. So now zooming in a little closer, we looked at different aspects of the three parcels, especially with Arkema. At the bottom is the brine field, it's in white, and then the two purple areas are areas where we think that development could work on those two parcels. The green area is got some restrictions from contamination that we know about in terms of cleanup that's probably going to have to take place, or going to have to manage the contamination on that property. We're also looking at enhancing the old drainage from the west to the east, and looking at how that could help solve some of the stormwater issues that might come up on this plant, and enhance this as a feature in terms of being able to get from the middle of Riverview down to the river perhaps in the future. So this is kind of maybe at 5,000 feet. The first one I showed you was at 10,000 feet, and it shows you a bunch of features that have been identified. So now we get to where we're looking at the framework. Now the framework is kind of where we've taken the three parcels and kind of imagined what could be on the site. And it's not important as to how many buildings are on the property or what's being shown kind of in the shadows on those properties, but we're trying to show what is usable, what isn't usable, what we think is going to have to be enhanced in terms of corridor, green space corridor, drainage, and all of the other factors that would go into redeveloping this area. This is what we know of contamination on the particular property. So you look at the East Plant site, we know a fair amount of where contamination is on that property. There's quite a bit of data. There's some data on the West Plant area, which there was an explosion, I guess, and fire back in 2000, roughly around 2000, that's caused some problems there, and we don't know the extent of those problems yet. There hasn't been a deep investigation of that property yet. And then the brine field, we only know about the very southern part of the brine field. There was a storage area for product, buried product on the very south where some drums were removed a number of years ago. Those are gone now, but that's just shown what we know from a contamination standpoint. So if you go back to this one now, that ties into why there's green areas on the East Plant site near the river that really can't be used for buildings, okay, because of the contamination, but there are other things that can be done to really support improvements on that particular property. And this goes even a little farther now, where we've put together a kind of a rough site use plan. And again, if the planners were here in front of you, they'd say the size of the buildings, the number of buildings mean nothing here. Okay, you could have one building on one of these parcels or 10 buildings. That's not important here, but it's just kind of imagining the what ifs that could go on the properties, what is usable on these particular parcels. And you can see there's a lot of light industrial that has been set up in the red. There's some public recreational things that can be done along the river. There's a little bit of retail down towards the river in Riverview. And they've designed in kind of what they call Riverview Boulevard, that kind of is a horseshoe shape that might be used there. And again, enhancing the green space down through the center, kind of taking that area back to what it probably was like before it was paved over a lot and encumbered by the chemical plant. Looking at these different development elements, similar types of things that we're talking here, and I'm sorry I can't even read that myself with my eyesight here, but looking at possibly things like a marina along the river, We're looking at maybe in the future, perhaps a bridge that could go in the green space across the railroad. These are just types of things that that we're looking at. And what I forgot to say earlier about our Stromberg Garrigan team. Stromberg and Garrigan are out of Pittsburgh. They've done tons of brownfield redevelopment, regional brownfield redevelopments all around the country. We went through a bidding process. They were a very reputable company. We had very good proposals by a number of companies, a bunch of local companies, and also Stromberg Garrigan. And they work a lot of times directly with the EPA. They do these projects regionally in Pittsburgh. They've done work on steel mill areas, heavy manufacturing in West Virginia. If you look them up, they've done tons of work very similar to this. So we really felt good about the ideas that they were bringing to the table for this analysis. This is just another slide showing kind of their stormwater work and kind of perceiving what would happen with Huntington Creek and perhaps some bioretention ponds, green infrastructure, etc. All of these things are factoring into this design in here and their potential parcel subdivision. Again, they would stand here and tell you that they can just about guarantee it's not going to look like this if it were to be built, but these are concepts that can be utilized no matter who the developer might be. They looked at vehicular circulation, where roads might be, how they could get people in and out of Pennsylvania Ave and to Jefferson, etc. They looked at bicycle pedestrian circulation patterns, recreation open space and riverfront interface, and just imagining what things could be down there along Riverview Avenue that they've named. And so kind of the final part of this is that, okay, this is a big area, it's a big job, it's a big project. How could we look at phasing some of this work in? Because this is not going to be something that's all done at once. So they started looking at the West Brinefield first, phase 1, West Brinefield remediation, initial private development. So that might be something that could start very soon if the property becomes available and away from Arkema. Phase 2 then would be moving further towards the river on the Brinefield area. Then phase 3 is the East Plant area remediation, looking at public infrastructure and a riverfront park with private development, perhaps kind of lining the park areas. Phase 4 would be private development, build out and expansion of public infrastructure and open space, so you can see how that's all filling in down by the river. And phase 5 would then bring in some of the West Plant development. Again, that's probably the most contaminated area, so that's going to take longer to prepare and get ready. Phase 6 would be multi-use trail railroad flyover, perhaps, where they could connect the West Plant area with the East Plant area, the Brinefields with the West Plant area, and in turn that would connect in with the East Plant. Before I go on, any questions just in general on kind of how the design, the site plan and the reuse plan kind of came up? I know I went through pretty quickly.
John,
Yeah.
John, the only question I have, when they were looking at all of this, it is in disrepair and it's very polluted, toxic.
Yeah.
Did they come up with some kind of number of what it would take to clean this up to
Yeah,
industrial use?
I have a slide. For that a little bit. Yeah,
Thank you.
so I can get into kind of what the impact would be if there were redevelopment on these 3 parcels.
Okay.
Reed, did you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a question. When you showed the slide, I think before this one, the shops and the water and an actual path along the water,
Yeah.
how many years would it take to get to that point? Ballpark.
Well, I think that the timeline is going to depend on how fast we can get the property away from Arkema. We're talking probably, I would guess, 5 years once you get the property from Arkema, but if it takes 20 years to get the
Right.
property, obviously it changes. But I think once the property becomes ready to be remediated, I think that can move in a timely fashion like many other brownfield sites around the state. It's not going to, the problem has been is that we've been in this holding pattern for so long that it's hard to even imagine going steps like this until we get the property, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that.
One thing we have going for us, there's no structures that need to be removed, like the McLeod cleanup.
Yeah.
You know, that took, you know, how long that took to get done, to get to a point you can even start the cleanup.
Right,
So we don't
right.
have that hurdle in front.
And Mill Street and Ecorse, we've been removing concrete now for a couple of years, you know, so, go ahead.
Question,
Go ahead,
John.
Brian.
I know the
Yep.
Huntington Drain runs through there, but are any of the, is there wetlands designated on any of those parcels?
There probably is. That would have to be, you know, folded into the design and figure out how we could,
See some of it on.
yeah, how we can accommodate that. Yeah, they realize that in, especially in,
It has designated it as wetlands
Yeah.
and it couldn't be developed.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that would be an obstacle for getting wetlands.
well, I think it can be an obstacle, but I think if we design it right and integrate it into kind of getting it back to the way it was, I think there are opportunities there. It's not like we're redesigning everything, something completely different, you know. I think we're going to try to work with Mother Nature instead of fight Mother Nature, you know. Yeah. Yeah, this whole process, one of the other kind of things we charged our group to do is that we want this to be a holistic type of project, all of these projects, such that we could try to solve other problems at the same time. So if you've got, you know, neighborhoods that are flooding, it doesn't make sense to redevelop the property and then the neighborhood next door is still flooding. I mean, we want to solve the flooding problems at the same time and work for ways that we can integrate those solutions at the same time. So we would look to do that. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
What brought me downriver was industry.
Mhm.
And in order for these downriver communities to really survive, if all we're doing is piecemealing everything, isn't there any possibility whatsoever? I don't see it apparently right now, but even the federal government is trying to get industry and building back up. And the biggest reason industry came here was because of water transportation and harbors, loading, unloading. I worked for Wyandotte Chemical, BASF, and then as a chemical salesman, I worked with what used to be Adochem. And why did they all come here? Because of the river transportation and rail.
Right.
And we even have freeways.
Mhm.
Is there no way, and then, just because if we don't have industry, manufacturing, we are going to have.
You can summarize the
So,
question
Yeah.
for those that can't.
is there any kind of hope whatsoever? I know, because you can't make it pretty and industrial at the same time. You
Right,
gotta choose
right.
one way or the other.
Well,
People
we're trying
want to
to
walk
do both.
along the river. We got a lot of places to walk along the river. I'd rather see
Development.
industry and jobs.
Well, I think this can accommodate that. I think the way this is laid out with parcels, I mean, there's nothing to say that you couldn't take all the parcels that are west of the railroad, let's say on the brine fields, yeah, and just have a big data center or some big manufacturing facility on that area. There's nothing to say that couldn't happen. I think most of the large brownfields around the country these days are integrated. They're not just all industrial, they're not all residential, they're not all commercial. It's kind of a blending of like things along the river. You can still do industrial, but you can do like ribbon parks through the industry, you know, so you get setbacks away from the river and still accommodate a large part of the industrial base that you need. That seems to be the trend that, you know, most of these brownfield sites are going to. But there's nothing to say that we couldn't do that sort of thing here. If Ford wanted to come and put a 1 million square foot plant down here, it could work. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is look at kind of the feedback that we got, the fact that we had, and looking at the features that we have on these properties, and the fact we can kind of work one section at a time. One of the parcels, you know, like the West Brine Field, and then perhaps the West Bryan Field, and then the west plant and the east plant. And if you just had 3 big plants, one on each of those properties, that is workable in some respects. I mean, we got to work around some contamination, but I think to look at the needs of the community holistically here again and solve some of these issues. We're going to have stormwater issues because of the creek that goes through there. That takes up some space here that we wouldn't be able to use in terms of putting buildings in certain places. And we have certain contamination that it would be too costly to remove all the contamination, but you can cap that contamination and do things like that and leave the contamination in place without having to spend a lot of money to exhume all that material and take it to a landfill.
Yeah, because I would think that the biggest thing that industry would have to look at, obviously, would be what can we do to encourage them to come. Obviously, as you say, it would be more costly, but then again, if it was a major industry with jobs and contributing to the tax base, I mean, it's just something I think we should forget about.
Yeah, sir, we don't want to overlook that point because we do know that as part of this plan, a primary goal has to be increasing the tax base and bringing new jobs to the area. We know that that is the only way that our cities are going to survive. So it's not just about green space. We're trying to get the best of both worlds, but John will talk here in just a minute about the actual economic impacts that could come from redeveloping these sites.
Thank you.
And why don't I go to that, because that may spur some other questions here. So, what I'm going to just kind of have a few slides that detail, what the impact is on construction jobs, permanent jobs, and looking at the tax impacts on these properties. So this table here, if you look at, the question was, how much would the environmental cost? Well, the estimate for all of these areas together is $34.7 million for cleanup costs. And then the building, the vertical building investment would be, for this particular scheme that we're showing, $183 million. So you're looking at a total cost of $217 million put into these 3 parcels. And it would, be split between this commercial, civic, light industrial, entertainment, sportsplex, and commercial retail, color-coded the same way there. And we're looking at perhaps 1.19 million square feet of building space on this. Again, the size of the buildings don't make any difference here. The number of buildings don't make any difference. If there's something else that would make sense, you can see on the West Plant side, there's, half that property is wetland related or wet drainage. And a good deal along on the East Plant side as well. So there are some areas that we're not going to be able to just put industry in as it was before, and the way we design buildings and along the waterfront in the past. And we're looking at, for one-time jobs, perhaps through construction, 1,400 total construction jobs. I'm going to skip that one. And the question was, how many jobs might we bring to this area? The estimate here is if that project was done, all those 6 phases, between 1,490 and 3,390 full-time jobs in that area.
John, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you mind going back a couple slides?
Sure.
And this is,
Which one would you want to see?
Right there.
Okay.
I'm not sure any of the planners took this into account, but above the entertainment sports complex to the left, see what that is?
The wastewater treatment plant? Yeah.
Here or what?
Yeah.
All right.
So did they take into account of putting an entertainment sportsplex and restaurants and whatnot right next to a wastewater?
Well, they know it exists there. I'd have to ask the planners. I mean, they know it was there. They've been up and down the corridor. I don't know.
Are they familiar with this area?
Yeah, they've been up and down the corridor. I'm not sure they went down the corridor perhaps when, the wind was blowing a certain way or that sort of thing.
Good concern.
But, yeah, that's,
I would suggest moving the marina down and changing that.
I think part of the hope is they get that issue fixed before this
Ideally.
happens. Good point.
And I'm not familiar, can you talk to me a little bit about the frequency of, you know, like smells and that sort of thing? Is that a continuous thing, or?
Well, it's pretty
To
regular.
the point where you don't want to be over there.
Okay,
Daily.
Yes.
okay.
Known as wake up corner when you're right by it.
Okay, well, I can talk to them about it, and find out, you know, what their, what the, yeah, what the impacts would have. We know that, that was a concern up when we were looking at Zug Island and that with the wastewater treatment plant across the street from Zug Island. I know that that was a concern there. I'll have to ask them specifically, about that, but I'll be happy
I'm
to.
fine with it. They want to put large windmills pointing directly north, that's fine.
It'd be a different use of windmills than just power,
Yeah.
developing power, huh? Okay. That's a good point. We can certainly talk about that. That's, and part of the reason to go to these council meetings too is to get those types of, that input, and when, we want to make sure that we didn't miss anything that could come up, so we'll bring that to their attention. So we looked at jobs. This is how the taxes would go up on those properties if they're redeveloped. And we're looking at, you know, 5.9 million more dollars a year in annual property taxes when you get to 2058. We're looking at, this one here says, I think says it a little better, the $79.1 million over 30 years if taxes were coming in on those properties. So the impact is extreme. Yeah, this is all potential, but it's extreme, and it's not even factoring in the non-taxable value, you know, the sports complex and things like that. That's just the taxable properties that are in that design.
Would that take in consideration TIFs or some other types of incentives you're gonna give businesses?
No. No, there would be no impact on the TIFs or other things like that.
John, are these numbers, if this thing was totally built out right now, are these projections, or they factor in phasing if something doesn't start till 15 years from now?
Yeah, I think some of the phasing is factored in. I don't know when those phases were factored in, though. I'll have to get you that information, David.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it doesn't really show that. It just shows how the taxes go up. I'm projecting that because there's some steps in there that some of those are phased in, but I'm not positive. You know, I can't answer that for sure. Yeah. And then you've got other, you know, taxes that are going to be coming in, that they're going to go to the state, more schools and county and other, you know, taxes coming in, Michigan business tax, sales tax. So there are other benefits here too. I think what we're trying to show is just how big an impact it would be if we could get those developed. So, before I go into next steps, maybe we can, are any more questions regarding just kind of the overall plan here? Okay, so one of the key things that we're looking at right now is how can we get the property out of Arkema's hands? And we actually sat down with the State Land Bank a couple of months ago, and we were kicking around some ideas. And one of the things we're looking at is the State Land Bank has offered to purchase those properties and be the intermediary for getting those properties cleaned up and then redeveloped. And the way that works is the land bank would work with EPA and Arkema and Eagle to form an exit strategy for Arkema. And it wouldn't let Arkema off the hook. Arkema would have very specific things that they would have to do and timelines they would have to meet. It would force a timeline, it would force things to happen, because right now there's nothing that's forcing them to do anything. We think that if there was certainty on the part of what Arkema would have to do, they know they're going to have to do some things. They've been riding, I think, the fact that there's going to be sediment put on their property, and they just leave a fence around the property until they have to do that, and the sediment project keeps getting delayed. So there's a lot of things that they're just kind of riding with right now. And we think that if we could get the land bank in and purchase those properties, and then they would flip them either directly to developers, or there's a way that they can flip them back to the communities. They're not interested in taking the property and making money off of this, and, you guys are left high and dry. The point would be is to facilitate the redevelopment process. And so, we're looking into that hard. We're working with Congresswoman Dingell to see if we can help facilitate that with EPA. She's been in a lot of contact with EPA, as you know, on this particular site, so we're trying to blend the ideas here and see if there's a way that we can do that. And in fact, this particular area of the 4 cleanup areas that or brownfield areas we've been analyzing is got I think the best prospect of being able to move forward. And this is the implementation type of strategy we want to employ as much as we can on these properties, because most of the large sites are privately held. And that's what's been holding back a lot of these things. We're working with DTE on their power plant sites. Mill Street and Ecorse happens to be, the community owns that, and they've got their own issues on that particular property. But we're working to figure out an implementation strategy for each of these properties, and this land bank process could be a good one for Riverview. We've also, just for next steps, we're going to be giving presentations, like we said, to the other communities. We're going to finalize the reports. And I want to remind everybody that we have cleanup money. We also have assessment money with DCC, EPA money that we're prepared to use on sites like this one. So there are opportunities here. We just have to get to a point where we can kind of clear the road and get to where we can use the money. And so that's kind of where we are with Arkema.
Right.
So you mentioned a key point. So once it's potentially, or it's sold to the land bank or given to the land bank for $1, whatever, how do we make certain that we as a community has input and control over the developer that purchases that, and it's not purchased by a company that's going to sit on it for decades or turn it into something other than the community's interest?
Sure. And I think that those would be talks what we'd have directly with the community, between the community and the land bank, and figure out whether we would just have them flip it back to the communities when it's cleaned up and when they're ready to go. There's a lot of flexibility there. It's not, they don't want that. The land banks, the land bank sites that they've been taking over time are those sites where developers have done what you just said, Brian. They buy the sites. They might live in California and they just sit on the properties because they think it's an investment for later on. The land bank doesn't want that. The community doesn't want that. So we just got to work to figure out a plan that can't happen.
And we want to make sure that Riverview is never in the position to be the one responsible to clean it up.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And that would be said in the consent judgment with Arkema. There wouldn't be anything that would be the responsibility of the city. It's going to be, they would clean it up to industrial standards, and if somebody wanted to do something more like a residential, it'd be the developer's, problem, or, they would have to invest money to take that cleanup to another level if that was what they want to do, or to get grant funds and things like that to do that, which is possible, but it's, that there's not going to be, it's not going to be on the city to do that.
Yeah, and then just to close too, as always, like our department, as I said, is here. It's not just the Brownfield program; it's our continued economic development and our small business services as well. I mentioned this EDA grant is wrapping up this year, a little bit into next year. We are fortunate to have received a state appropriation last year that is able to sustain our department for the next couple of years. So thankfully, I'll still be here for a little while, not losing my job. So, but feel free to contact us. We're always, very willing to talk through ideas, and we do that on a regular basis. And appreciate you guys, all of your passion and support for this community. It really is working to really enhance our cooperation amongst all the communities in this corridor. And I think we do have the potential for some real positive movement.
And I'll just say on behalf of the city is, you guys have been doing a ton of work out, basically, behind the scenes. So, we always say that we haven't done anything for years to get it cleaned up, but there's been a lot going on. I think, but with the DCC now being involved, and John, you guys, stuff is starting to be coming together. And I think the next step here, as you've already alluded to it, is the engaging with the Michigan Land Bank.
Yeah.
Where I think we have a meeting scheduled with everything will come up pretty soon.
Yeah, next week, yeah.
To discuss that, so I know it's painfully slow, but
It is.
something starting to happen.
Well, and I think what we learned when we put the EDA application in is that a lot of people were doing similar things. And so when we went around and started introducing ourselves to other organizations, they became partners, like DRP, SEMCOG. They had no idea some of the things we were doing, and we didn't know a lot of the things they were doing. And so now we're really all working together, and it's really smooth the whole process out.
And I do want to just make a mention, Jim Wagner is here. He's the chair of our Brownfield Consortium. And I think, Jim, you can attest to this, that people are starting to look downriver. Now, they are seeing the momentum growing. We're all working, we have a collective voice, which the DCC has always facilitated. But I think now with these efforts, the actual site planning efforts, it gives us something to head towards. And people are taking notice.
Jazz, I would just say, a good thing, in this past week, I've spoken to Speaker Hall's office 3 times, and we're going to be meeting with his office, and he is interested about what's happening downriver and Conference of Western Wayne, and funding money to us and helping our legislators. So the legislation, the people from Lansing, I think finally, collaboration is what we're trying to get everybody working together, and we've done it. Brian's been working, the mayor's been working on behalf of the community, and Jeff is working there. So I'm just saying to you, we have to work together to be successful. And I see the light at the end of the tunnel with what's going on, because we have people now looking downriver.
Yeah.
Because Jazz and John and the other people working there have brought the DRP and Shannon and those people, DTE, we have meetings with them. And you see how many, Jeff and the mayor, you know how many people now attend the Brownfield meeting, and that's networking and finding out what's going on. And I think we're going to be successful within this next year on a project. I think we can be successful with what we're proposing for the Arkema site and getting it off. And one of the deals we will probably have is an interlocal agreement, because it's both in Wyandotte and Riverview, that it's similar to what they have on Plymouth and Plymouth Township that we're looking at.
But I think that Mr. DeRosa's point is, obviously we want some access, recreation access to the river, but it will include some type of industry.
Oh,
It
sure.
must.
Yeah.
I think it has to.
Housing.
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to play a major role in it.
Yes.
So I think that's, with these larger sites, that's, kind of got that going for us.
Right.
Right.
As it gets developed and available, I know there's interest all around the Romulus and these other big sites, but we will have a few big sites available.
Exactly.
ourselves.
You can start to compete in that
Yeah.
growing market. Yeah.
And some of the parts of the properties that cannot be redeveloped, that's where we'll focus recreation and things like that, because it's a much easier solution for recreation than it is for other types of uses, so.
And that's not a dead end. You have those contaminated properties.
Right.
There's still, you can still find uses for those. It's just not, it's not the end of the road there.
Any other questions and comments?
This is great.
You guys did a great job. Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you. You were our first one.
Yeah.
So, for this phase, so thank you for.
Yeah, provide any feedback, and if you've got other questions, you can email me. We'll definitely look into those questions about the wastewater treatment plant and things like that. Those are important, though, because,
Yeah, they are.
not everybody can see everything that you see. That's why we want to keep everybody engaged here. It's your show. We're just kind of
Facilitating.
We're just facilitating it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple reports. Soil came in and Dave Screw.
We'll give them a minute.
Yep.
Yeah, we almost bought a house in that over there. It was so cute, great house. Loved it. We went back again to, we
The
wanted
next
a
day
second
when we won.
viewing. And it stunk so bad in that backyard.
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna roll up in her yard.
That same person is complaining every month that they do a meeting. So,
I mean, we did.
well, because they don't have some homes there, so. Yeah, I asked that same question.
Okay, Jeff.
All right, well, we have some engineering reports. We'll start with
Thank you,
Sohio.
Jasmine.
Thank you.
Sohio, tell us all the good news.
Yeah.
Good news is the weather is getting better.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. Most of the projects are weather dependent, so we're waiting for temperatures to go up. We have some parking lots to fix. We have the water
Parking lots,
main,
is that library, those?
library, community center, city hall, and the parking lot across from the library. We got estimates on them today. I think that we brought in front of you by Jeff next meeting to get authorization to proceed. We need to do something with them. I mean, they're pretty much in a dire need of some sort of rehabilitation, maybe not reconstruction at this point because of the cost, but at least joint sealing and seal coating. We can buy some years on it until we have enough funds to reconstruct them all. The water main is scheduled for midsummer on Clark Avenue. The sectioning, we're putting the list together, almost done with the list. That's going to be taking place hopefully end of May, June. Then when the July budget kicks in, we'll do the rest of it. So
Will we publish the list of street section?
We will.
Just so people.
we will.
Yeah, we will.
Definitely go out so residents would know
Right.
who's going to be impacted. Lead services also is getting scheduled. We're going to have a pre-construction meeting with the contractor. Otherwise, we're doing lots of site plan reviews. Vreeland Park is going to get started tomorrow. I think they're going to do the roof on the pavilion.
Oh, cool.
Then when the asphalt plants kick in, we'll start doing the pickleball courts and the restrooms and the fountain. So that's moving along. Again, slowly because of the weather, but it's getting there. That's all I have.
We had pre-bid meeting for the Dewey Tunnel.
That we had a pre-bid meeting on the Dua Tunnel, and the bids will be opened in May 5th, something like that. We're looking forward to getting the prices on that job and see what happens. We'll take from there. The funding, we have some funding in place to get it initiated, then the rest may have to be bonded. So, and we have other projects we're looking at, water mains and lining of sewers. We're looking at lining.
We have to put that out too, or?
We have to bid it out because it's a bonded job, so it's going to be about $3.2 million, and that's going to impact our excess flows. I know Dean, you're for getting that.
Brian had a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's your responsibility or if that's directed to you, but the entrance off of Fort Street into the 4 subdivision off of Kingswood, where they did the patch, asphalt patch, and then they ran the, DT did the piping or something like that along Fort Street, it's sunken again. So when you turn off of that, it's a very rough exit when you're
We'll
doing
get
50
to
or
the building
55
department
off.
that,
Yeah.
Brian,
Is it the county?
That's building department.
Building department.
That's a punch list item on the contractor that did the job. They have to come back and make it right. So-
Okay,
so-
yeah, I appreciate that.
They did the same thing in
It's a
front of
rough
the
job.
Highlands.
Yep.
Knock on wood, it's okay for right now, but we're watching that one as well.
Okay, thank
They
you.
had to do the
We'll
same
make sure
thing.
they come back and fix it.
Mhm. All
That's
right.
all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sohio.
Dave? Skirdo?
Yeah, got two things on my plate. Jersey Mike's has received their building permits, so they're gonna start their build out of their.
Where's that at, Dave? Exactly.
It's on GameStop. It's over Urban View Plaza, the shopping center over at 4th and Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It's like the third building down. It's
Okay.
farther to the south. And
Jersey Mike's.
Panda Cannabis Place business is gonna go in front of the planning commission again tomorrow night. They made some revisions to the site plan.
Okay.
Is that Panda? Is that what you said?
Panda
Yeah,
2?
Panda 2, yeah.
Okay.
Awesome, cool.
Any questions for Dave?
Thanks, Dave.
that plaza's getting filled up. We got Brewster's open now.
Yep.
And Jersey Mike's
That's good.
coming in there.
Good.
Just people at the other end of the street, that city would be all right. That it?
That's it.
Okay, any other business council wants to bring up? None? Now it's time for public comment. It's your big chance. Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody.
That was very